is Tipping Tower of your week. And you already know we have Mark Boatwright Frost with us today. All right. So this is the last episode of the year. How many have we done consecutively, Mark?
44.
44 consecutive episodes. Man, it's definitely been a pleasure. I enjoyed doing the show with you. I know I'm the disembodied voice today. Off camera, I will join Mark here shortly. But we got a very special show for you today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Mark so he can introduce us to our guest and bring him forward when you give us the cue, Mark.
All right. So I know you're used to us talking ad nauseum and forever about social movements and grassroots movements. And sometimes we talk about the whys, but today we're going to talk specifically about the whys. And we're going to focus on the oceans. I don't know if most of you know or any of you know that the way that we figured out climate change was actually ocean temperatures, not air temperatures. And what the ocean does affects all of us, and more so than you may even think. And our guest today, I've known for well more than most of my life. We went to high school together. We dove together. We've known each other for a very long time. I'd like to introduce Courtney Platt.
All right. Let's go ahead and bring Courtney up. Courtney, how are you?
Mark, it's really good, but it's really good.
Hold on a second. You're breaking up. Let me see if we can fix the volume, the breakup here.
I'm getting a terrible feedback here. Yeah, I'm hearing everything.
Go ahead and repeat that, Courtney.
Everything twice. Oh, hey, that sounded maybe. Yeah.
It sounds like we've got a little bit of signal variance. Folks, Courtney's coming to us from the Cayman Islands, and we're going to be talking about something other than banking today. So, yeah, go ahead, Courtney. Tell us about, God, we're already off script, and it's only 30 seconds into the show. So tell us a little bit about why you do what you do in the Cayman Islands, and then we'll get into more detail shortly.
I'm sorry. I'm here.
Huh? I didn't miss that.
For 3 times, 2 seconds between, so it's like I hear you. For a course.
Okay, so we understand the lag. So talk a little bit about why you got involved in environmental movement in the ocean in the Cayman Islands.
Mark, I'm gonna have him reset his browser really quick,
Okay.
and then we'll continue. Refresh your browser for me. Matter of fact, leave out of Restream, close it, and then come back in. That should fix it.
Okay, so while we're doing the restart, touch all the plugs. Make sure that you're not using your CD tray as a cup holder. Tech support stuff. Courtney will be back in a second, and we will start talking about how he got to the Cayman Islands. One of the things I want to mention that blows my mind is that while he's a photographer, a documentarian. He is underwater photographer. If you go and look him up and look on some of the images he's got, they're amazing. He's National Gallery listed. But the thing that, because I'm me and because Courtney's Courtney and we've known each other for a long time, the thing that actually kind of blows my mind is he drove a tourist submarine in the Cayman Islands, taking people on tours underwater.
Wow. Was he in the Navy?
No, this is like a glass bubble that you drive people around in and they get to see things and you tell them what's going on.
So how do you get trained to, drive a sub?
You need to talk to him about that. I don't know. I just know that he did it. And it's one of those things we haven't really talked much about. but it's one of those things that's stuck in my mind going, ooh, cool job. How do you put that on your resume? Cool job, sub driver for tours.
That is pretty cool. Let's see if this is any better. Go ahead, Courtney.
Hear you once now. That's great. First of all, you're really dating me, but I look like in this. We both now have gray hair and like teenagers. So yeah, we've become our parents. It's great to see you. Happy to be on this show with you now. Doing with your life too. This is happy to give my input. That first question again.
Yeah, so Marwan had a question for you. And Marwan, could you turn the volume up a little bit? I can hardly hear him. Marwan wanted to know how you go about getting licensed to be a submarine operator.
It's done. We're doing a lot of sub diving. That's a very rare thing. Very few people. We came here in 1986. IT rides in the sub. They just trained the super enthusiastic guy who already knows life and let him drive photographs for us. So it worked out great for all of us. That kind of job. Be the right guy in the right place. It's the same with the National Geographic guy in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
You get trained by the people who are the agency. There's no such thing.
Okay. Well, then that kind of makes sense, but it's one of those things that is in my particular life. I looked and said, God, Courtney got to drive a submarine in the Cayman Islands doing tours. How cool is that?
And it was the coolest job I've ever had. I mean, it was pretty high up on the scale too.
Yep. So talk a little bit about what brought your passion. Well, I know what brought your passion about diving. I dived with you for a long time, but what ignited your passion and made you even become political in the Cayman Islands to deal with this?
Kind of big, but I'll try to make them as brief as possible. I started snorkeling around 8 years old, out all the marine life, and I was so fascinated by what it was and what it does, uses, what it feeds on, all that sort of thing. So I was immersed in marine biology from 8 years old, free diving that whole time until teen for scuba. Early on, like those days, I was spearfishing and doing all these things that detrimental they were until in college. So then I did 20 to 30 years old. I gave up the spear and I pursued my interest in water photography. But I ultimately ended up here in 1983. And the political part, though, of this, I was completely full of Nixon and Watergate shenanigans going on in politics then. How much worse it could get. So I was totally apolitical. I ran, and finally, I became. And then I realized I was trying to make here for the we're not going to happen if I did some way, at least a little bit here. And I'm not a politician, but my heart was in saving the marine life here eventually. And as we may discuss later, when we're here, which would have been extremely detrimental. The reefs in Georgetown Harbor. I really actually kind of came out of my shit quite politically here. Politically involved with an environmental. Were you able to hear all that?
I lost a little bit of it, but I got the gist of it. There was something from your TED Talk I wanted to bring up briefly. I remember you talking about the old timer stories about what fish were like and how much the fish were, and then you really kind of dove into the data about how much loss of fish life there was on the reef, and you showed some great pictures about how, and I don't have them here, unfortunately, about how that is. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, in the YouTube link, there's the link to Courtney's TED Talk about the Cayman Island reef fish. I suggest you watch it. It's fascinating and a lot of good data. TED Talk. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. TED Talk on the reef fish, and there's what I'm referring to is a portion that he talked about that he's talked to old timers who did fishing, and I'm going to let him tell the rest of the story.
Okay. Well, a big part of, and I think it has to begin with the point that we overfished our reef stocks we love to eat. The big groupers and the big are grossly depleted. And because born in a rare window in history, we had between the which came along in the 60s, the decline of the worldwide. It's not just here, but this in the coal mine sign of what's going on around the world. There's a high density population of fish now. Our fish were declining scuba diving here from 83 until today, and I've done well over 5,000 scuba diving, primarily the marvels of our reef. Witnessed a tremendous decline themselves, which it's a whole nother story. The fish population, which is a huge, and it's got tremendous bunch of different levels, not just today, but action as food to eat today. For food today, you can't afford to go buy a chicken thing, but also as a strategic for the day that it hits the fan. And when because I'm Christian, and that could happen if tragedy comes up, cargo from coming in. We are an island cargo for our food supply. So strategic food reserves. Government now encourage people to grow food. Restoration of the fish as a result of this overfishing, I believe, a huge key element reserve. And benefits, as I've said, economically for daily food supply, but it has to be to its highest potential, sustainably from that point on. It really could be done. I have great smart and do it, but we have a lot of biology is far behind in catching up with what fish populations. We don't even know quickly each species can reproduce, and factor in understanding what would be going now, but after a higher level. So a lot of research, governments need to wake up, get into the woods here now, because this is, you can probably tell, and if we just get smart. But the old fisherman, not really hilarious, but sad that although and at all for doing their job so fishing, these guys are commendable in their and they had good reason for doing it without any science to follow, no fishing regulations at all to the population. And when you act as good today as it was when you were a boy, no, sir. When I were boat with fishing, just a few hours, you fish all day and hardly catch one. And then I say, you know, I'm doing my hair and going, well, you used to fish, and now they say, but I don't know where. Okay, all right, you don't know where they were.
And then you ask the question. You ask the question. When was the last time you saw that species of fish?
Which is the most important species in terms of both tourism. That fish completely white. In the picture that you're showing behind you, that big tail of the whale sticking up in the end of the island corner, that southwest point, there right by your elbow, spotting ground at the east end. So there were two spawning grounds. All of the Nassau groupers would go once a day. All of the groupers on the west end would all go together at one spot south end. Same thing would happen at the east end. And since we, Department of Environment, and the fishing of while they're spawning at the spawning site in 2003, since that, and maybe 400 to 500 fish sight a blue moon, and not one spawning since 2003 at the southwest line. Not a single sighting station at that corner. And west end, which is 7 Mile Beach and is right next to your face, one Nassau grouper in the past 10 to 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
now there are more, but it's just going to be a few individually stand, and those all get half of the island to breed, to spawn, and they're saying 400 to 500 maybe. But they're hard to see now because they're where they used to. They're going deeper, way deeper, to get down to where they're spawning.
So
it's
you mentioned that marine biology is way behind, and you and I had a brief talk this morning about that. And actually, we said it differently, but we basically were saying the same thing. Is one of the reasons is the funding for it, and you said the funding's not transparent, which I don't disagree with. But I think that the funding is limited, and my viewpoint on all funding these days is it's targeted toward something that makes a profit, and therefore they don't care about things that don't make a profit. And therefore, marine biology isn't as well funded as it needs to be to give us any real information on what's going on in the ocean. And since that is one of our last feeding grounds for the human race and our ever increasing population, it would be nice to know what it looks like health in the health field and what we can depend on. I know the Grand Banks is now mostly fished out. I know that the Gulf of Alaska is starting to dwindle, and prices of halibut, which are very hard to find, used to be plentiful 40, 50 years ago, are now getting harder and harder to find. I've seen prices up to $32 a pound for halibut. Salmon is always a question, whether it's strong, and the surface water has a lot to do with that and what we do with that. And nobody seems to be able to get together and have that conversation. And part of it is nobody can quote numbers because we don't have enough information for marine biologists, which are not well funded. Is that pretty much your understanding as well?
We hit the target in the center, and the problem is we're so far behind that baselines were never established. So back when were plentiful, say even 1960s, we really find a count of these species, not just fish in general, but each of all the ones we like to catch. Data was never a result of lack of funding, and also perhaps a little lack of force. I think it's mostly funding. Without having any baseline for height of our reef fish population, it's very difficult now to count now and say, look at drop. You are limited. Your hands are in making any kind of statements. I, as a can make. It's anecdotal evidence. There's compared today with yesterday. Here in Cayman, and thankfully we've got 3 islands, and one of our islands is wonderful. The diving, the coral is much healthier there, and I think that's because of the fish population. That's little Cayman, but fish count for Grand 2009, 2010, and from local government. They are UK territory. We are British, and the UK now has something there where they're looking at overseas territories like us. And so there are problems environmentally. How can we help? And in 2009, that our first ever fish count. You know, if that's your baseline, 2009, pitiful. Really, going forward now, if we mine 2010 in these species, they didn't actually count each bird. They grouped it all together as there's 6 or 7 different species of grouper. Just said grouper. So they say, well, we don't know how many Nassau groupers, how many tiger groupers, black groupers, etc. Which I was very disappointed. And sorry, guys, I got to tell the truth. And it's, I believe, because driven by the people to this precious national resource. Box that I want to stand out for that one.
Also it's food. I mean, a good chunk of your food, okay, the majority of your food is imported, but a good chunk of your food comes from the ocean around you. If you don't have healthy fish, you don't have food to feed people.
That's right. And I'm only talking about satellite picture that you're looking at right there, underneath there, of my the reef trout. It's like a narrow little blue island, and that is the only hatch reef fish live. Dark blue, deep water beyond the reefs that cross that water. Adults never across. That's just too scary. Out in the deep open ocean, you just wouldn't do it. Now, larval fish, the currents, but primarily.
Courtney,
yeah.
Marwan sent you a chat. You'll see a chat box on the bottom. Take a quick look at it. He sent you a note.
Okay.
One of the tricks about this is keeping up with all of the different things we're going through.
Yeah, we definitely want to be able to hear. So I need to give you okay.
Hey, while you're doing that, I was just going to relate that when I was free diving in Hawaii in the 70s, that if you go to Anama Bay, it's this cute little bay near Honolulu that you can feed fish peas and stuff like that, and swim around in its reef and its sand, and it's really cute. And you can see all the colorful fish. But if you go over the edge of that reef,
okay,
Marwan.
The big delay.
There's a big delay
on too.
Way less in the computer.
Sorry?
There you go. Much better.
Yeah, it's coming through better. Okay, so in Anama Bay, when you go over the reef, you got to walk out on the reef and then drop off. It drops off 300 feet. And
so what's coming through better?
The cell phone is coming through way better.
All right, I'll put you on speakerphone, see if it works.
Okay. So anyway, and it's like you go in from this beautiful enclosed reef space to over the edge of the reef and into all you can see is blue as far as you can see. And there's nothing else there except for very, very big fish, including sharks. So when he's talking about they cross the reef, that's when you cross the reef, it's like a whole nother world and all you see is lots of blue. All right, Courtney, sorry.
Okay, so are you able to hear me now?
Oh, God, yes. It's 100% better.
Okay.
I'm not trying to put pieces together.
Very good then. Okay. So I don't know how much you guys missed. I guess you missed everything?
We got bits and pieces of it as it was going through, and it would lag, and then pieces would rush in while you were talking about something else. So it's like putting puzzle pieces together. But this is much better. No. We got the gist of it.
Okay.
We got the gist of it. You were talking about when they go across the reef, and that's why I brought up the reef thing while you were doing the technical stuff.
Okay. Well, I probably should reiterate key points like, funding for marine research. We desperately need to spend a whole lot more money on researching the populations of things on the islands here. And thankfully, we've got 3 islands to compare with. So we have not only Grand Cayman, which you have photographed here in the aerial view, but we also have Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. They're roughly 70 and 80 miles away from us here. But Little Cayman is far less developed. It's a lot like Grand Cayman was. In fact, well, it's even less developed than Grand Cayman was when I got here in '83. But the fish population is about the same as what I saw in 1983. They still have the groupers. They still have schools of snappers and stuff, large schools. And I'm not saying we don't have them. I'm saying we have a whole lot less than we had in the past. And in my TEDx talk, I do show a graph that I made up from anecdotal evidence because we have no scientific data for prior to 2009, which is a very sad state of affairs for us here.
Yeah, which is what I was referring to earlier.
2009. Yeah. But even the data we have now from 2009, though, is not adequate in my perspective, because I want to know how many fish we have of each species of grouper, not just grouper as a group, which they got grouped in when they were counted. So there's a lot more to do here. And we can never go back and collect the data that is missing prior to 2009. There's no way for us to know anything other than the anecdotal stories like I have and like the old fishermen have about how the heyday was when the reef was packed with fish compared to today. It's a tremendous shift, though. Tremendous. I made up a graph that's as close as I can get, and conservative. I made a conservative estimate of the change over time. And not surprisingly, and this will lead to another topic of conversation for us, not surprisingly at all, the graph for fish, when we see let's see if I can get my hand in here, the graph for fish goes like this, while the graph for people goes like that. So the human population of Grand Cayman has gone up sixfold since you and I were born, while the world population has gone up threefold. So we've tripled or so the world population in the same period. We've done more than double that here in Grand Cayman. And you can see from that satellite photo, which is not this year, that's an older photo, that we've already developed close to half of all the woodland of the island. And the original cause for this island even being on a map back in the 1600s, 1700s is because of the wood. We had fantastic woods. The island was famous for things like mahogany. And, I've collected some mahogany and logwood. We were famous for logwood, which is now an invasive species. If we get into talking about invasive species, this is beautiful wood, but it's not supposed to be here. A very rare now wood called yellow mastic. It's a really beautiful hardwood that was popular in shipbuilding, so they over-harvested this, as well as snakewood, which is now a super rare wood. And you're wondering why I've got these beautiful little pieces of wood. Well, I'm an environmentalist and conservationist, and I made these little phone stands so you can set your cell phone on that to watch videos and things like what we're doing right now. If you happen to be watching on your cell phone, you don't have to hold it the whole time. But the whole purpose of these is because I just wanted to show off the beauty of this wood that was knocked down by storms or bulldozers. Okay, this one in particular, actually both of these, super rare. These are among the rarest trees we have now, the snakewood and the yellow mastic. And these were knocked down very recently by bulldozer for an extension to a bypass and a big roundabout that they're building right now. But it's because of our increase in population that we now are covering the island with roads and buildings and replacing the natural forests that had originally attracted settlers here. And ships were stopping here to make repairs because we were well known for being densely wooded with ironwood, mahogany, all the things they love to build with. And of course, fish and turtles. I'm sure this is no surprise to any of our listeners, but anywhere around the world, wherever there are natural resources, that is renewable resources that, they spawn themselves, wherever human population has risen dramatically, the local population of those natural resources has plummeted. And that's why we're having this conversation, I think.
It is. And actually, a couple, 3 weeks ago, we did a discussion on the population and the fact that when you and I were born, it was about 2.5 billion people, and it's now over 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
And scientists have put together a chart saying that we are using resources like we have 1.7 planets.
Yes, exactly. But here in Cayman, it's even way worse than that, right? That's a nice general number for the whole world. But when you start looking more specifically at isolated areas, you're going to find a much greater ratio of loss of resource in those high density areas.
Yeah,
and so for that purpose,
there's
Cayman
a parallel.
is kind of like the canary in the coal mine.
Okay. Yeah, there's a parallel between the Caymans and Kitsap Peninsula, where we live and we're filming from. Is that Kitsap Peninsula is in the middle of the Puget Sound. We're between the proper Puget Sound and the Hood Canal. They have it's like this narrow peninsula that goes. I don't know if I can do this. That goes up like this, and the very bottom is kind of narrow. And when we hit the Cascadia Rising disaster, that's pretty much going to become water filled, and suddenly we're going to be Kitsap Island. And the only way on and off are a bridge off the Hood Canal, which is a floating bridge, and a Narrows Bridge that goes over to Tacoma, and then the ferries. So anything happens, and we are effectively cut off from the rest of the world. Now we have 366,000 people, or 266,000, almost 300,000 people on this peninsula, and the politicians around here are predicting that we want to get to 500,000 people. And we don't even know what the water tables here are doing. The Suquamish and the S'Klallam tribes are worried about the fact that we're already destroying a lot of the surface water for development, and that salmon runs are dwindling. So we're in this very similar position as we're using our resources, we're paving the peninsula, and we can't sustain it. We lost you again. Did your phone disconnect? Oh, he's where's Marwan?
Unknown caller.
Okay, hold on, Courtney. We're having a technical problem on this side. He's calling in on his phone. There he is. He's back.
Okay, I just called you back, but it would really be helpful if you call me because the rates from Cayman to anywhere are like 4 times anywhere to here.
Absolutely.
And so if I stay on the phone for an hour,
it's okay. Marwan's going to call you right now. Sorry about that. I didn't know. Okay. Oh, you need his phone number? I've got it. Okay. I'm pulling it up right now. Hold on. Damn thing is being a royal pain in the patoot today. Here we go.
Hold on, I'm just going to read the number to you.
Okay. I don't have my glasses on. It's in this run right here. Get his number.
Uh, 345 916 1945. Hey, Courtney, we're trying to call you and it's just going straight through. You could try on your phone, Rob, and just see if that works. Go ahead and talk to us, Courtney. 345-916.
Hey, Courtney, hey, can you hear me? Nod your head. Okay, we're back.
Okay.
And Rob's
Here we
calling.
go.
Okay.
Okay. Hear me now. Hear me now. Hear me now. Oh dear. Okay, how's that?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, as long as I have you turned off on the computer, I can hear you. But I can barely hear you. You're kind of weak.
Now, lost track of where I was going. So I was going to ask you about without stirring up too much of a pot, I wanted to talk a little bit about the cruise lines and their proposed inner port, because I know that was like that would have been the death knell for the reef. No matter what their environmental impact statement said. So you want to talk a little bit about the cruise lines and what's happening now with the boats going out to them and what they wanted and what that looked like?
Sure. The cruise lines have argued that they will not bring in their newest, largest ship to our harbor because a number of reasons that are solvable with tenders. But according to the people who run the tenders here, they could build new tenders that would easily and perfectly and safely accommodate those big ships, anchored the way that they're anchoring now with no pier. But we continue to get the smaller ships, which in many of the arguments that were given during the debate, whether or not we needed this pier to begin with, many arguments said that we don't need bigger ships anyway. And we get enough cruise passengers now, and et cetera, et cetera. That's just one part of the argument. But killing the reef was the part that set my hair on fire, and it was clearly obvious that was going to be the case. And the people who did the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment, gave a presentation, a public presentation here in a large hall with the government officials all lined up at their desks, along with the cruise officials all lined up there. And these scientists went up and gave us a presentation that painted a clear picture of how destructive this was going to be to the reef surrounding the dredge pit area. Immediately after that presentation, the Minister of Tourism stood up and calmly said, therefore, we're going ahead with it. And my hair literally caught on fire right then. I could barely keep myself in my seat. That night I went out and I posted a change.org petition, and we got over 5,000 signatures, saying this is a bad idea. We don't want it. And, but that alone would not have swayed the government of the time. We thankfully elected, as a result, I believe, of this whole argument, a new environmentally minded government that is in charge now, and they are showing that they are more environmentally minded. And but it goes a long way to show how important it was that we all got together and banded together. It wasn't just me. I could not have pulled it off by myself. Thank God, some really bright people who had many other very fine arguments against this thing, like the carrying capacity of the island. And we were already at carrying capacity. It's in most people's opinion, we were full up, right up to here with traffic. And it's gotten worse since then. Continues to get worse because our population keeps going up. And so traffic was a big one, carrying capacity, the carrying capacity of all of our tourism attractions, the much greater value of stay over tourism versus the cruise passengers. I mean, a tremendous difference in how much they're worth daily to our local economy and to all the hoteliers and condo owners, et cetera, and taxi drivers, and it goes on, restaurants, and all the gift shop people. But there was a small handful of big gift shop type people, owners of our biggest shops on the island. Little handful of those who would have benefited from this increase in cruise tourism. And so anyway, thank God we all got together, including at least a couple of politically savvy folks who, pulled me up because I was at a loss for how to deal with politics. And thankfully, we angled in on voters and we made it quite aware to our politicians of the time that the voters are greatly leaning in toward environmental conservation in all aspects of environmental conservation, not just underwater, but on land as well. And but we were able to stop that thing. It was a huge effort. We had to actually take it to referendum. And it was only after we proved that we had the numbers to trigger a people's initiated referendum, which is much more difficult than a government initiated referendum. And at that point, finally, government gave up. But that government spent, I think it was something like $3 million of our money fighting against us with paid advertising that largely was telling many different faceted lies about how safe this was going to be for the reef and how good it was going to be for the economy and how it wasn't going to make any negative detrimental effect. So
remember when smoking was good for
tried
you?
Really hard, but they couldn't convince the population, thankfully.
Yep.
And as a result, now we have a government.
Yep. So remember when they told us that smoking was good for you?
Yeah, right.
You're one of the few people that I could say that to that would remember that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So
now we see where the lies were there.
Yeah. So I want to paint a little bit of a picture because it's something that Marwan and I talk about frequently. So let's kind of take this that they were putting this pier in to bring larger ships in, to bring more tourism in. And in the process, killing the very things that the tourists were coming to the Cayman Islands, the Grand Cayman for.
Yeah, it was even worse than what you just said sound. Yeah. It was even worse than that because they were going to kill the only reefs on the island that are shallow enough in calm water for glass bottom boat tours. Right? And so that was a large part of what cruise passengers wanted. The other thing that was going to be destroyed was access from shore to beautiful shallow reefs they could snorkel to. They could walk from the cruise dock over to the entry area for these different shore dives, right in that immediate vicinity in Georgetown Harbor, where the best of our shallow reefs are in calm water. When I say calm, I'm talking swimming pool calm. Okay, that's the lee end of the island. And they were going to kill that super precious reef. And I've got to tell you, too, you could easily estimate the age of these reefs to be at least 5,000 years old in their development. These reefs grew from 35 feet deep at the deep edge in the sand that they rise up out of, up to within 8 feet of the surface. And corals that build that reef, that kind of structure, those corals grow at a rate of approximately 1/4 of 1 inch in diameter per year. 1/4 of an inch in diameter per year. Whoa. That took a long time to grow those reefs, and they were going to kill them. I mean, it's just sickening, you know?
Yeah. So basically, and this is something that Marwan and I discuss frequently, is that our unchecked capitalistic impulses globally end up killing the very base that supports them.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, the influx in stayover tourism can be attributed to Bob Soto, who started the dive industry in Grand Cayman the year I was born. So 1957, Bob had this crazy idea to buy some scuba tanks, put them on his boat, and begin taking tourists out diving on the reef. And that attracted this rapid influx of stayover tourism to the island as we became world renowned as the diving mecca. All divers needed to go to Grand Cayman to go see this amazing reef we had. And all these fish, big fish, and big friendly fish like the Nassau grouper, which it seems instinctively is extremely curious about scuba divers and friendly as a puppy dog. When a group of, say, 30 divers exit from a dive boat and start diving on the reef, when we used to have them, we don't have them on the West End anymore. But when I started here in 83, every dive site had dozens of Nassau groupers. And as you crossed down across the reef, one after another, these big 3-foot-long fish would swim right up and look you right in the mask and greet you. Now, that's a photo op. And I'm here to tell you that if I was in charge of the Department of Tourism in Grand Cayman, I would be doing everything in my power to increase the number of photo opportunities because of today's social media. That is free advertising with all these divers with GoPros and pro cameras, etc., looking for something to photograph. If you had a 3-foot-long grouper looking at every diver over and over again, you would be the most famous dive destination in the Caribbean because everybody else in the Caribbean, just like us, has overfished their reef. But Bonaire is a shining example down in the Southern Caribbean, in the ABC Islands, of what an early response to this threat with a marine park can do for you. They were early in establishing their marine park, and they made a stronger marine park than ours. We started in 1986, and we failed to make that a real marine park. And as a result, Bonaire has an edge over us for dive tourism in respect of the fish population and these photo opportunities on the reef. But we can restore this. It's not yet impossible for us to back off, take our hands off the reef, educate our population, which is kind of the end of the punchline that I want to get to in the end here, is that I'd really like to be spending my time going to schools, educating children on the need, regardless what the regulations are, to just stop catching fish off the reef. Because kids are handed a fishing rod like you and I were as kids, and with no instruction, even though there are fishing regulations here now, they're being handed fishing rods and they're not being told that you're not allowed to keep anything under 8 inches, which is one of the regulations. I want to go around, teach all the kids about the regulations, but also if you don't have to catch a fish in order to eat dinner tonight, then don't. If you don't have to buy a reef fish from the local fish seller, if you could afford to buy chicken or anything else, then buy chicken or anything else, because we desperately need to restore this population for so many reasons I could get into, but let's not get too deep in the woods.
Sure.
Courtney, is there a way to reintroduce those fish back into the reef?
That's an excellent question because I've heard it so many times and it just makes me cringe because it is so simple to restore the population just by taking your hands off. Just stop catching them. They will rebound on their own. Really? But this idea
the ones that
that
are still there.
a few not very well, marine biology oriented people get, because the fish we're talking about will live 20 to 30 years, maybe more. They don't reach maturity for about 8 years. And so to try to raise them in an aqua culture situation, like some kind of a fish farm, to do that would be prohibitively expensive. It'd be ridiculously expensive. It's also environmentally detrimental, as we know from fish farms, or from shrimp farms and fish farms elsewhere. The effluent from that is terrible on the environment. But it's just such an easy fix. There's no money involved except for funding for marine research, counting your fish and paying attention to their recovery, right? Count the recovery. Learn how quickly they reproduce. So you get some idea how many you can possibly take per year and remain sustainable, allowing that population to continue to grow without having it drop. And this is, can I give you an analogy with banking? I don't want to take too long, but banking is a great analogy, because let's say you have $10 million in the bank, and let's say that was our fish population 1960. $10 million in the bank, earning 2% interest per year. You could safely spend $200,000 per year and never cut into the principal. Now, anybody who understands their bank account can see how that works. You can stay a millionaire, $10 million in the bank as your principal, just consuming the interest earned each year, not more. As soon as you start digging into the principal, now you're dropping. And that's what we did heedlessly for decades, for 40 years, without any thought whatsoever to what would be sustainable here. We just kept eating it away, until finally somebody woke up and said, whoa, wait a minute, there's not enough fish left. And in 2003, we finally closed the spawning grounds, but it was too late for Grand Cayman. And we are not recovering quickly here at all, if we're recovering at all. However, we may be. At least our fish expert at Department of Environment believes that there is some little sign of an increase in juvenile Nassau groupers in the lagoons. That's a good sign. However, we need to protect them. And there's a number of different ways to protect them that we have not yet initiated. And in the meantime, education of the problem could convince many people who otherwise would go out fishing not to. And that's my goal now. While I wait for the regulations to catch up to what I believe we need, and I believe are easy regulations to put into place, but that's a whole other issue. I'd like to be teaching everyone here to just stop eating a reef fish until they recover. Give them a chance. Did I answer the question? I think.
Yeah, you did. So let's say they were able to, folks backed off. How long would it take to replenish to a healthy level?
Yeah, well, that is exactly the kind of research we don't have. So we don't know how long it would take, but we do know a few facts. We know that it takes them about 8 years to mature, to become, capable of even producing eggs, and that the older they get, the bigger they get. They never stop growing. And the bigger they get, the more eggs they produce. The most important, the most valuable fish on the reef are the biggest ones. And they're the first ones you go to spear or try to catch and get all excited about catching, and you keep them if you can, until we set new regulations. And finally, just recently, we have done just that. We now have a window for Nassau grouper, but only Nassau grouper. All the fish need this. But for Nassau grouper, we have a window. You can take fish that are above a certain size and below a certain size, but you cannot keep fish below that minimum or above that maximum size, because that maximum size is what we really need. We really need a lot of those to reproduce and bring back the population that was here before we started fishing this reef. And I believe, because of the little bit of marine biology that I do know, because I did major in marine biology for a number of years before finishing my BS degree in physical education, I know that the more fish you have on the reef, the more they can produce, and the more you can take sustainably each year. And this is really the target, I believe. And yet the Department of Environment doesn't talk that way. They don't talk about restoring the old population of the reef as it once was. They talk about just saving it from total wipeout. And we're just trying to keep from wiping it right off the island. And maybe a very slow recovery. And how fast we recover really depends in large part on how seriously we make an effort to stop fishing the reef.
Yeah. So this is a discussion
in the face of this growing population.
And this is a discussion we have frequently here. People around here talk about sustainability. And I said, you want to target sustainability? That means to just sustain where you are now. Your target should really be resilience, which starts at sustainability and builds up. And you're in the same position. They're talking about trying to sustain where you are now. And what you need to be is resilient, which means you need to grow the populations.
That's right. Oh, and let me just backtrack a little bit. Another big facet of this whole thing is that the reef itself has died a great deal. Not completely. Thank God we still have some corals left, some hard corals left. But when I got here, the coverage of the reef in live hard coral was about 80%. So about 80% of the whole reef, that counts all the sponges and gorgonians in between, was live hard coral. Today, it's less than 20%. It's been dropping so rapidly, it's probably down around 15% now, on average around the island. And
to take a quick step backwards for the people listening, coral is a living organism. And for those of you who don't know that, coral is a living organism that grows and it forms the reef, and the shells of them as they grow and die form the reefs. So if they're dying, there's no more reef, no more healthy reef. Sponges are also living. And so you have to understand that everything he's talking about is part of a living ecosystem. Yes.
And we could talk infinitum on that one because it's also what built this island. The entire island is coral. It's limestone built by coral reef animals. But as the reef is dying, our scientists are very concerned that the source of sand is now absent, right? And not only that, the fish that used to convert the coral into sand are absent. So locally they call them squab, but the big parrotfish, there's 3 species of really big parrotfish here. They are crucial in producing over 80% of all new sand on islands like ours. And that too is recent evidence from a study done in the Maldives on an island like this, where they proved that over 80% of all new sand on that island was being produced by the large parrotfish there.
Which are game
so
fish.
And here we ate them. There's
Hawaii too.
There are so few of those big ones left compared to what there once was, that it would behoove us to really take it seriously and protect the big parrotfish at least. And we are making moves in that direction. You can't spear them anymore. You can't spear the groupers anymore, at least the Nassau groupers. You can't spear them anymore. And we've limited spear guns to people with licenses. Department of Environment would really like to, and so would I, love to see spear guns completely gone, because, as you know, I grew up spearfishing in California. I know how detrimental that is, not only to a healthy population of fish, but certainly to a recovering population of fish.
Yeah, and
so that's just one issue. There's many. many other issues on how we could restore the population. But a catch limit would be a good start. We have no catch limit on how many fish anybody can take. We also allow anybody who lives here to catch fish, or anybody visiting to catch fish from our reef. And we could stop that very simply. There's a very simple regulation that would allow fishing on the reef by Caymanians only, by people who are Caymanians. Yep. That would go a long way in reducing our take from the reef.
Yeah. So we're over our hour, and I want to ask if you'll come on again in a couple months so we can continue the conversation, because it's a fascinating conversation. We never even got to our starfish and your sea anemones, or your sea urchins and the sea urchins and what's going on. That's a whole conversation into itself. But I also, when we never even talked about some of our diving experiences, but I will tell you one thing from my experience. I lived in Hawaii for a year, and I was couch surfing with Hawaiians and diving with Hawaiians. And for all the diving and crazy stuff that we did, diving with Hawaiians is a whole nother extreme level of crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. They gave me a Hawaiian sling with a 3-prong Hawaiian sling and pointed at something in the reef. And I went down and looked at it. It was a 14-foot moray eel. I came back up to the top and said, "You want me to spear a 14-foot moray eel with this?"
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, they have a whole nother level of crazy in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I admire them.
I'm just so sad.
Huh?
I am so sad now. When I go diving on our reef now, it just makes me sad.
Yeah.
To see the change that's happened here. And I know that despite climate change and global warming, and that the damage that that's doing to the corals, because there's a perfect storm of things attacking our reef, not just our fish population, etc. But there's, we can go on for this. And I'm sure that by the time you edit this thing, it's going to be less than an hour because we had so many big glitches in this.
Yeah.
So thank you for the patience for all those people who did listen in on this live. And I hope that we'll see a much refined version of this recorded when we get done. So I look forward to that. And I look forward to the next talk.
Yeah, we'll cut out a little bit of the beginning. And now that we know how the tech stuff is, I'll just call you on my phone and we'll do it that way.
Very good.
Okay.
Well, Mark, it was great seeing you.
Yeah. So I have one question for you from our past.
Yep.
Do you remember us going to the drive-in theater in your old station wagon to see Legend of Hell House?
Whoa. Yeah. That was scary.
Yeah. That was not a diving. That was not a diving story, but yes. No, it was. We went to the drive-in, and Courtney grabbed my knee at one point because he thought it would be funny, and I completely unwound.
Oh yeah, that was good. That was good. That's my favorite gag.
Yeah,
I love doing that.
So yeah, and I would still maintain that's the best version of Hell House.
Yep, everybody should do that to their buddies.
Yep. All right then. So, and I know you're in the afternoon, so you've got some stuff to do, and we have a few things to wrap up. But yeah, I'd like to schedule some more time with you if Marwan's okay with that.
Oh, absolutely. That's fascinating.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'll bring the pictures out next time.
All right. Thank you much.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mark.
All right.
All right. You too. All right. Bye now.
All right. You guys want to bring me a mic up there so I can talk with Mark? So that was definitely a fascinating conversation there. Definitely need to.
I'm sorry, what?
He just needs to kill the line there.
Oh.
So that we can, hear everything and get into the reef and what were you saying?
The starfish and
the starfish. So definitely interested in that. And then just how the fact that global things, Cayman Islands, thousands of miles away, wherever it is.
It's in the Caribbean.
1,000 miles away? Thousands?
3,500
It's off the East Coast, right?
Yeah, 3,500 miles.
And how that affects us here. And we're looking at it, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we've got Port Orchard is flooded. We've got ice storms. We've got, over
No-
50 deaths in
Yeah,
United States.
no starfish here.
There's no starfish here?
There haven't been starfish in most of the West Coast for over
Really?
8 years. A parasite.
Wow.
This is why we want to talk about the sea urchins in Cayman Islands. Same thing happened. A parasite came in and wiped out the population. 8 years later, it was starting to come back, and it's now almost 8 years with the starfish. And then another parasite came in and is wiping them out again. And they are a very important part of the ecosystem. They do very important jobs. The starfish eat shellfish. They're a predator of the shellfish, so they keep things in balance. And the entire population of starfish dissolved
Really?
like 8 years ago from a parasite. They just like melted away, and they haven't come back.
The question is, are starfish like bees, right? So supposedly if we lose the bees,
Yeah, in
Humans
the
are
ecosystem,
die.
and I am sure there are people that really like the fact that the shellfish populations are doing better because the starfish aren't there to eat them and keep them in check. But there is a very important balance, and we have to look at the entire picture. It's what we talk about every Wednesday, is that we have to look at the entire picture, not little pieces of it. And we have to look at it and understand how what we do here affects something over here,
right?
because everything is connected. It's an ecosystem. There's resilient ecosystems. We need to create resilient ecosystems in our humanity, in our oceans, on our lands. Otherwise, we won't be here. It's just that simple.
Looking at other people's problems, even though it does affect us indirectly, it seems so easy just to say, hey, look, don't fish. It's just illegal. Can't fish. You can look at them all day long. You just can't kill them. You can't fish them.
But there's dollars involved. Okay, Cayman has two major industries. They have banking, obviously, and they have tourism. Both of those are intensive on other people coming to your island. But the thing about tourism is,
and wealthy people want what they
want, and they have the money to spend down there. But with tourism, if what they come there to see goes away, you lose your tourism industry.
That's why it seems so obvious. It's like, look.
Well, it's obvious to us, but our paycheck isn't on the line.
Wow. Wow.
I used the term during our discussion, unchecked capitalism. And this is what I meant. Unchecked capitalism is not a good thing. It means we use our resources much faster than we can replace them. And at some point, that all collapses. And it's coming soon to a life near you.
We're going to have to do something, right? It's kind of
We
like
are
me
doing
on the
something.
screen right now, just kind of fading in and out.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to exist. You may be able to zoom in on me.
Or, yeah. You're ghosting, dude. You're ghosting. You
Well, I mean,
you wore gray.
I think it's a great example of what's happening.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah, this is a fascinating conversation. I'm glad that you, had someone to have this conversation and make it happen. So we'll have to definitely do this and have the pictures. I think will be great. Maybe you do it from your house. That way you've got your computers. You could just share your screen.
Yeah.
And then show those things.
And then he can talk about it, because a lot of the pictures he sent me, and they were in Dropbox. My computer automatically just went there because I have Dropbox there. My tablet's giving me all kinds of hell about it.
Problems.
But there are pictures of the presentation that was done on Grand Cayman about the environment and the reef, where there were literally thousands of people supporting and participating. Now they have a population of 80,000 people. So when 5,000 people sign something, that is a significant portion of the population. And the new premier was in the audience around the edges watching to see that there was support for this. And then he threw his hat in the ring to run for premier and won.
Wow. Okay.
And Courtney is as non-political as you get. And he and I have been talking about this for a while, and he's been kind of interested in what we're doing. But when, he thinks that at some point you have to get the grassroots movement going to change politics. And then 5 years later, after he was going, I don't know if I could do that. And suddenly he's involved in getting the new premier elected.
Well, you can hear his passion.
Yeah.
So how long has he been in the Caymans?
Since 83. Well, he said 86, but his profile says 83.
Wow.
So, and I think he was there in 83. Say he drove a submarine to do tourism, take tourists down. They have these glass submarines, all windows, and you take people down and you're like at 30 feet, cruising through the reef and looking at the fish and stuff.
Do you have like an emergency scuba tank?
I would assume. I am in love with submarines. Matter of fact, no. Yeah, 30 feet, you don't even get bends. You just swim to the surface. It's one atmosphere, so it's simple. So kind of going back on my own personal history here, when I went into high school, my world history teacher gave us an assignment for a final project. He says you can do anything you want to do on your final project as long as you do it in a historical and a world picture. I did undersea exploration. And the end of that, and Courtney was in my class. In the end of that, we went to the beach, and I had built an undersea city out of models, and I put it out about 20 feet, 30 feet out, and took people out to look at it in the eelgrass. It's got part of it. But one of the things I talked about was Treste 2, which was a deep submersible, one of the first ones to go deep into the Marianas Trench. Now I come up here, many years later, around 2000, 2001, and we go to the Keyport Undersea Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And Treste 3 is sitting right there in the parking lot.
Really?
And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like completely mind blown, thrown back into high school and thinking about, oh my God, I would have given a kidney to have gone down in a deep sea submersible.
Wow. Now where's the trench at?
Huh?
Where's that trench?
Oh, Marianas Trench.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the Pacific Ocean, closer to the Marianas Islands. And it is the deepest trench on the planet. It goes over a mile deep.
How close is it to like off the coast of California?
Oh, it's thousands of miles,
Oh, okay.
2,000 miles away. It's between California and Australia, to kind of give perspective.
Okay. Just want to make sure, because that's where all the big super creatures are, right?
Yeah. And we didn't even get to talk about,
Kaiju, the giant squid,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I want that trench to be very far away. We haven't explored hardly, just a very small percentage of our oceans.
Yeah, but we're
That's
busy,
terrifying.
But we're busy killing it by the time we get to explore it. There won't be anything left. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
except for the big stuff that really kills you,
So Courtney and I were diving in. We went on a dive boat to Catalina Island, which is about 26 miles west of San Pedro in California, which is not too far from where we lived, an hour away. And we were diving on about 35 feet of water, and we came to a kind of a split where there were like two canyons and a fork. And he went down the right one, I went down the left one. And suddenly we're about 20 feet down the canyon, and we're looking for abalone and stuff. And suddenly everything gets silent, and there are no fish anywhere.
Mm.
And I know that you don't think of noise in the water. I didn't think about noise in water until there was none. And then you think about it a lot. You think about, oh God, what's going on? So I start coming back down the staying on the bottom, coming back down the reef. And I'm like, pull myself around just as Courtney's pulling himself around. And we see each other about this far apart with our masks going, hug!
Oh, wow.
And then we and so we swim along the bottom, and we get to the anchor of the boat, and we're like, we're 35. Okay. And then we shoot straight up and onto the dive deck, throw our tanks of water off just as the captain hit the recall button for divers, calling everybody back to the boat. And people's heads were popping up out of the water all around. And Courtney and I are looking going, no. Apparently, no, not apparently, what was happening very close to where we were was a great white shark was caught by a trawler. And it's the one that is the skeleton at SeaWorld. And that happened when we were in the water with it. No, but I'm pretty sure there was by the time when I saw Courtney, I'm pretty sure there was a trail of yellow following me back along the bottom.
Wow. So was that the tequila? Is that why it went silent?
Yeah, no, it was there was a fish deterrent. But yeah, no, that was one of the stories that we had, and there and Courtney, as I was telling, Hawaiians are fearless. They hunt boars with knives and dogs. These guys do things that just make no. I mean, I guess it's cool, but makes no sense to me. I mean, I've got a gun, I'm going to use it, but and Hawaiians have a whole different level. But Courtney was my first experience with somebody who has no fear about stuff. I watched him one time while we were diving off Laguna Beach, pull a octopus out of a hole and let it wrap around his head with the beak on his face mask. And I'm like, yeah, no, not happening.
Yeah, no. I don't really want to go in the water.
Oh, mostly it's really cool. I love diving. Free diving is one of my favorite things on earth. Just when you put this, he's right. Actually, you weren't there for that story, but when you have tanks and weights and all the stuff on, it makes movement restrictive. I love just straight into the water and just swimming, and just I want mass snorkel fins. That's it. On the other hand, the one time I did that in Catalina, and I was like whipping along the reef, I was coming right up the reef, and suddenly I saw this fin go like this, and I pulled way back as I was coming up off the reef, and there's a fish called a rock sculpin. They're about this big. For those people who haven't seen this, it's about 18 inches to 2 feet, and their spines are neurotoxins. And my chest was about that far away from the spines as I pulled away from it. And it was just sitting there on the rock.
Yeah, you're not saying any good stories on why to go down into the water.
The beauty of it. The beauty of it. I mean, we always tell the exciting stuff.
I can see that at Petco.
Yeah. But it's actually, you would like Anama Bay. Anama Bay in Hawaii is an enclosed bay. The reef keeps all the big things out. And there's a lot of little fish in there that are really colorful, and they give you peas to feed them.
Really? Nothing scary in there?
Nothing scary. Little frozen peas. No, since last you were there are eels in there because I've been in that bay. Oh, okay. Well, none of them ever bothered. Did they bother you? No, because I didn't go sticking my hand in holes I shouldn't. Well, yeah. That okay. Don't stick your hand in holes. Never mind. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, one more exciting story. I went after an abalone, and I didn't see the eel in the cave, and I lost my best dive knife.
Wait, what's an abalone?
Abalone is a shellfish about this big. Well, if you're doing it right, it's this big. And if you peel them off, it's all muscle inside that sucks it onto the rock.
Mm-hmm.
And you get them out, you peel them out of their shell. You've seen an abalone shell, right? They're really colorful mother of pearl inside, and they're rough on the outside, usually about 4 holes on the side.
Mm-mm.
Okay. They're gorgeous.
That's the first time I heard the word.
Yeah, but you pull the abalone out and you beat the bloody hell out of it with a mallet, and you bread it, you fry it. It's one of the best things on earth.
Abalone.
Yeah.
Yeah, never heard of it.
They're all fished out. You can't get it anymore.
Oh, well, that might be why I never heard of it. Yeah.
I watched people pull 12, 14, 15 of them out of the rocks and go dig them home, and you're only allowed to get 5. And you have to make sure they're a certain size. I was laughing when Courtney was saying, yeah, you have to make sure it's the fish is within this window. And I was going to ask him, says, okay, you and I have been spearfishing, Courtney. How easy is it to pull out your ruler and measure the fish? Let me take out my tape measure. Yeah, but does it have an app for deep sea water? Sure. The app goes.
It's fascinating, but yeah, I would like to scuba once, but I do want to just do it in the safe
Anama Bay is fun. I am terrified to go back to Hawaii because I lived in Hawaii for a year and couch surfed. And I have been there many times in the 70s and early 80s. And I hear what's happened to it. And with the overdevelopment of there. And I've heard that Waimea Falls is dried up a good chunk of the year now. And I just kind of don't want to go back and have my memories meet reality.
I was there in the late 80s and early 90s, and I've heard the same things you've heard. I mean, as it's progressed, it's got worse. And I mean, from the time you were there to when I was there, there's a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see in the pictures, you'd see in the pictures of locales and everything. Different.
The reefs are dying. Oahu's horrible from what I hear. Maui, I don't know what that's like. I hear if I was going to go there, I'd go to Hilo. I go to the Big Island because it's the only one that's still reasonably pristine. I mean, there's Kauai and Molokai and some of the other Lanai, some of the other islands that aren't as populated, and they put protections on for that. But I don't want to spend any time on Oahu again. There's a place called the Seven Sacred Pools, and there's a pool with these like running falls down, and over the top of the pools are guava trees. And I would walk down and pull a guava off, and from one pool to the other, I would eat the guava. Guavas are sweet and tangy, and I would eat the guavas going down walking from pool to the other. Hawaii truly defined paradise for me. I love that. And we went to a restaurant in Oahu, and I'll tell the punchline of the story in a second, but. My friend Bruce and I was living with his family because he's Hawaiian Filipino. And I was living with his family as we were couch surfing in different islands. And we had just enough money left before we were heading back to go to a fancy restaurant in Oahu. So we went to Honolulu, and we went to this restaurant, and I ordered steak. He ordered lobster, and a cockroach flew in and landed on the steak. And I took my knife and pinned it. Dinner was free that night.
Did you eat the steak?
Well, the next one, yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, so cockroaches in Hawaii are about this
they
big.
get really big. You know what?
And they'll
I heard that, so I spent 3 weeks in Hawaii, and I was told that before I went, and so I was terrified. And spiders and something else down there too, right?
Frogs, which you don't think about. We were driving back from that night on the Kings Highway, heading back to where we were staying in Haleiwa, which was on the North Shore. And we were driving back from Honolulu, and suddenly we were sideways on the road sliding and pulled over to the side going, what the hell was that? We get out, and there's like a million frogs pouring across the road, and we just drove through them.
I didn't see any when I was there. I was so thankful. They're like, oh yeah, you go into a jewelry store and there's roaches and bugs in there, and I don't know if people were pulling my chain, but I didn't see anything. Thank God. And they were like, put your shoes upside down, and
they eat a lot of things that I won't eat. And it's not because of my allergies. We ate on the beach, quite honestly. Most of the time, we walk out from the house and we go down to the beach, and we would eat on the beach. And they would bring blood beans, which is beans and pork blood. And I'm like going, yeah, no, that's right off the list. Pork blood.
I'd have to try it once.
Yeah,
I just have to.
Yeah, go for it. I didn't. But living in Hawaii was great, but the cockroaches and such, you don't really worry about. We were living on lanais, which are the porch, the screen porches in the area, and you learn to love geckos because the geckos they're all over the place, and they will run over you, but they're so cool and so friendly, and they eat the cockroaches.
Oh, they're cool and friendly. They're great.
They're cool and friendly.
Oh, I appreciate them eating the cockroaches.
Yeah.
But they're everywhere. That's the problem.
Well, actually, in the 5-star hotels, they tend to control them.
Wow.
Hey, I'm all about staying in the lanais. That was one of the coolest times in my life.
They have spiders too?
I never saw one. But I've heard that they do. And they have centipedes too.
Yeah, centipedes. They were like, yeah, keep your shoes upside down.
Yeah, check your shoes. You know, you just do a standard thing. You check your shoes and make sure nothing's in them.
I was terrified.
Yeah, I grew up in the high desert. You always do that anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
never saw anything, and it was great.
Yeah, I grew up in the high desert, so we had tarantulas, scorpions, sidewinders. So you always checked your shoes.
Wait, where were you?
I grew up in the high desert,
What,
in San Bernardino, down
in California?
Southern California.
Okay, so don't go to Southern California. Check. Got it.
Oh, or Texas.
I got a problem with Texas because of the rattlesnakes.
No,
Living with the kittens.
the beats and
Living with the kittens?
Yes, I told you about that. We stopped at a couple of different rest areas, and they have to raise walkways because of the rattlesnakes and everything. And there's literally kittens being abandoned and living there. So and I'm just like, they're food for the freaking. Shut up.
The rattlesnakes eat the kittens? Yeah.
Oh, that's messed up. Don't make me come over there.
I can't help it. Well, that's funny.
I know.
That's hilarious.
so right off the bat, Australia, the entire continent, is off limits for marijuana.
Yo, yeah.
Yeah, the entire continent of
Yeah.
Australia.
Yeah, you might as well just stay in one place and be safe.
Yeah, no, I'll just Google it. But it is on my bucket list. There's some I like the architecture. Like I want to go to Russia, I want to go to Australia.
Go to New Zealand because New Zealand has no snakes.
No snakes?
Yet Australia is home to the most poisonous snake on the planet.
The most poisonous critters on the planet,
That's
period.
true.
The platypus, this cute little weird duck thing, is got poisonous spines that'll kill your butt.
Really?
Marwan, you talk about living life on hard mode. This is where Monkey would go to survive. Like we'd step into the normal game,
Mm-hmm.
and we're like, we're gonna stay normal. No, Monkey goes, give me Australia.
Wow.
Okay.
I didn't know platypus had
I didn't know that either.
Okay, so I'm going to go right into the Death March zone. Has anybody here heard of Snake Island?
Yes.
It's off of Argentina. It is the home of 4 or 5 species of the most poisonous snakes on the world. It is you are not allowed to go there at all because if you do, you will die
Wow.
in a horrible way.
What do they eat?
Yeah, anything that's running around there. I don't know.
I mean,
I was
each
watching
other?
it- I was-
like,
yeah.
'cause, I mean, what else is there?
I was watching a documentary, birds.
All land has some kind of road, whether it's.
But I mean, if there's that many, how can you, at some point you'd figure they would just destroy it all.
I'm just saying now. They wouldn't destroy it all.
So, Gendry, you might not know, but I've spent a lot of my life studying biology. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm very interested in that I learn about.
Well, this took a turn.
Yes. But it didn't really, because we're right back to the fact it's all ecosystem. Everything needs something else. Like we just talked about the snakes. You need to have something for the snakes to eat. It's all balanced. And if we, as humans, do not pay attention to this, we are threatening the entire ecosystem, whether we think we are or not. And we need to be able, Well, this is the one place where market should control it. I mean, I go to Costco and I look at the halibut there. Not that I really want to buy Costco halibut, but I look at the halibut at Costco and it's $32 a pound. I said, well, I guess I'm not buying halibut.
Yeah, the salmon's pretty expensive. Salmon's delicious, but
They have good seafood there. They do.
Yeah, I buy the cod.
Well, it's something you said that tilapia. It's something you said that because
You make it taste like anything.
well tilapia has you gotta be careful of that too because it has that not iodine but something in it like someone told me I'm just trying to Google what.
Yeah, and tilapia is pretty harmless fish for a white fish, but it's also pretty flavorless. On the other hand, if we do the grow centers here, we can grow tilapia in aquaponics centers and have tilapia and have basically small tilapia farms all over the peninsula.
mm.
And it's a basic fish. Like you said, it doesn't have a lot of flavor. So for people who don't necessarily like fishy things, it's a good source of all those proteins and everything that fish is healthier for you than your meats. And so by having the tilapia for people who don't necessarily like that fishy flavor, you can make it taste like anything.
So we have to figure out how to grow
the Korean barbecue
Yeah.
or doing the
Mhm.
teriyaki.
So
and-
at the very base of it, we have to make sure we have cattle so that we can have milk, so we can have butter, and we have to make sure that we can grow lemons, which is really challenging in our environment, and we have to grow dill because with lemon, dill, and butter,
Yep.
Well, then we need crab.
Crab is so expensive. Not if we're growing it ourselves and actually making sure that it's repopulating and taking care of itself so that there's not a need for it. And so when the quantity goes down, the price goes up. That's true. So if we make it a sustainable, as long as food is sustainable, the price can't be.
So here's a factoid for you. And back in the 60s, I watched a Jacques Cousteau special on crabs and seafood. And it turns out that crabs don't die of old age. They just shed their shell and get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm thinking that somebody sometime is going to dive under the ice in Alaska and come up with find a king crab that's like 50 feet across.
No, I'm not eating that. I've seen some YouTube videos of crabs whose legs are longer than the table, and it's like, yeah, I'm good. There's nothing cool about that.
Out on the water, right on the beach. I don't know if it's still there. And we would go up every once in a while, and you could order the crab, and it was cooked, it was cleaned, but it was the whole crab, and
Yeah.
your plate was this big.
Yeah, the place over on the wharf in Seattle does that too. The crab bucket or something like that. I actually
crab pot.
Yeah, crab pot. I go to the place outside of the crab pot where they have the smoked fish.
Uh-huh.
And when I go to Seattle, that's where I go to have lunch because you're not going to have any of my allergens in, halibut or cod that's been smoked with alderwood, which is fabulous. And they do quarter potatoes. And I'm like, yeah, I'll have the quarter potatoes in that, and we're good.
It's good.
But the crab pot, you go in there. It's a very nice place, view of the water. And then, but if you're going to do that, you should go to the aquarium and off to one side where they have the transparent octopus thing that goes over the top. Off to the side, there's this little camera and a little station that nobody ever mans. And you should go watch that for a few minutes because it's actually cameras that are about 160 feet down off the wharf because it's that deep. And there are times that sharks that are really freaking big, like bigger than boats, swim by there. And what they do is they throw bags of rotting food off there for the fish to eat and for the sharks to eat.
Shark is tasty.
Ugh.
Shark is good. Oh, I've had some really delicious deep fried shark.
Shark is oily and slightly gamey.
Deep fried.
Huh?
So good.
I haven't deep fried.
Oh, man.
But so I lived in Huntington Beach, California.
Turn the heat up. I'm freezing.
Yeah, I lived in Huntington Beach, California, and one of my first houses, and it was a little beach shack converted into an apartment, and it was like a little half studio, half one bedroom, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I went down to Huntington Beach Pier. There's a guy across the street named Larry who was really cool, and he let me use his poles, and we went off to the pier and we would fish, and the bonita would run in, and bonita they're about 2 feet. They're fast. They're built like tuna, and smoked bonita to this day is still my favorite fish. And they boil in, and you take a diamond jig lure, no bait, and toss it in, and they will hit like that. And in like a half an hour, 45 minutes, I'd hit limit, which is about 11 fish.
Bonita, huh? I don't think I've had that either.
They're in the same family, but they're not quite in the same flavor range. Okay, so then I would take them to the Main Street Saloon, which doesn't exist anymore. Neither does the pier, actually. And I would trade them for eggs and milk and then they would smoke some of it, and then I would get some of it back. I would get some of the smoked fish. So and that's how I would live, as I would trade fish and such. But you don't only ever get bonita. Sometimes you catch a shark, and actually fairly frequently you'd catch a shark, and he'd bring it on, and you'd beat it to death immediately, and you'd eat shark. And I don't particularly care for shark. I've eaten enough of it in my life.
Yeah, deep fried. Just try it deep fried. It's delicious.
Anyway, yeah, shark is an interesting thing, and it depends on what kind of shark you have as to how it tastes.
Have you had eel?
Yes.
Is that good?
Oh, unagi, one of my favorite things on earth.
An augie.
Unagi. It's sushi. It's
Oh,
sushi.
yeah. Okay.
It's freshwater eel with barbecue sauce on it.
With barbecue sauce?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Huh? Anyway, yeah, there's all kinds of things, but my favorite fish is halibut. I
like halibut.
I get halibut and I coat it with ginger marmalade, and then I grill it, and it grills into it, and it's just like the ginger sweet flavor with the halibut is pure heaven. But I can't. Yeah, but it has been so fished out that you can't get it anymore. Or if you do, it's like $32 a pound. So we fished out the Gulf of Alaska. The Grand Banks have been fished out pretty much. So we're in a world of
Seemed
hurt.
like you couldn't get cod for a while.
Yeah.
'Cause I grew up on cod, and then all of a sudden I didn't see cod in the store for a long time.
Yeah, and now they have this mystery fish called rockfish, which
Or
could be
whiting.
any, or
That's the East Coast fish.
Yeah.
Whiting.
Yeah, or
Like, what's
any
whiting?
number of things that are like what?
Whiting is pretty good though, because you can get it at all the corner stores.
Yeah, actually, I've been meaning to go up to the Squamish Seafood and take a look at what they got.
Well, is everyone hungry now that we've been talking about food for the past 20 minutes?
Hey, lox, bagels, and cream cheese. Best of all worlds.
Lox bagels or lox, cream cheese, and pickled vegetables inside of crepes.
That,
I'm with him though on this one.
that doesn't-
I am so Jewish roots. I grew up with delicatessen food, and so to me, they're okay. If we were going to do a road trip, we should go down to Los Angeles and go to Cantor's. It's like the best Jewish delicatessen on the west coast of the United States. And oh my God, one time I was coming back from Santa Barbara. We were going through Los Angeles, going back home. And I took a friend of mine to Cantor's. And I'm like, okay, I'll have corned beef on rye with Swiss, bowl of matzo ball soup, and go from there. And the person I was with ordered turkey on white with mayo.
Wow.
And I'm like,
No imagination.
It was like going to Hawaii and going to McDonald's. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Although they do have banana pies instead of apple pies, and the banana pie is delicious.
but yeah,
There is that.
but we should do a road trip to Cantor's and
On the way to Disneyland.
I'm not playing.
I haven't been to Disneyland. I've been to Disney World.
okay. So it sounds like we need to plan a train trip.
Or have I? I've been to Knott's Berry Farm.
Take the Cascade Starlight straight on down.
Maybe.
Get a car with this little side door so you can each of us have a bed and sleep through the night and stuff.
I never went. Wow.
But yeah, that'd be fun.
Well, you want to give folks some thoughts as we go out of this year and into the new year?
Yeah, folks, wake the hell up, get off your butt, meet your neighbors, and come talk to us about how to make the world a better place.
I wasn't gonna say it quite like that, but what I was saying earlier, a few podcasts ago, is you do not have to wait for an arbitrary date to make a change. So it's close enough to the 1st of January that, hey, if you're gonna make a change, okay, fine. But outside of that, you do not need to wait for a date. You learn something new and you want to make a change, you want to make a difference, just make the difference. Just start doing it. Make the impact. We can't wait. There's so many different things. that are we're at the tipping point, right? As the show is at a tipping point. We're at a precipice, and some things are lost. We're not going to be able to get them back. So whatever we can preserve, whatever we can save, we have to be we have to have an urgent mindset about it. I think 2023 should be a mindset of urgency. We cannot slowly try to figure things out and learn and what should we do and ho hum. We have to be urgent. We have to be urgent. So be urgent about something, and be urgent about multiple things if you have the capacity. And many hands make light work. So engage with other people, as Mark said, and let's get urgent about saving ourselves.
Absolutely. And remember, every year that passes and we're there is one less year we have.
Facts. Well, with that, I was saying, please have a safe New Year's. I don't know what the weather is going to bring us because we don't know what's going on. It's crazy. What do they say? Out like a lamb, in like a lion, or something like that.
I like a lion, in like a lamb, but in this case, it's
out like a lion,
Yeah.
right? This is climate change is real, folks. Climate change is real. Ice storms. I mean, we thought last year was crazy with Texas getting their ice storm and people dying, and then this year,
let's
Mother Nature's like, hold my beer.
Let's do yeah. Hey, hold my beer and watch this. So let's just take a real recap of the high and low.
Mm-hmm.
We had 110 degrees and 15 degrees.
Yeah,
here in
Streets
Kitsap
melting.
County.
Yeah, yeah.
This year.
And from what I understand, this summer is probably going to be really hot, seeing as it got so cold.
Yeah, every year is going to be hotter and colder.
Mm.
It's here. There's no way to stop it now. What we can do is mitigate it. And COP27, promise and promise and promise, and then for those of you who didn't hear that,
I heard you clearly enough. Thank you.
Well, all right, y'all. This is the last episode of Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces for 2022. Join us next year, same bat time, same bat channel, and we will continue on the pursuit of resiliency.
Yep.
You got the final word there, Mark.
Have a great new year. Then get off your butt and go meet your neighbors.
All right, y'all. See you on the other side.